Hello everyone, this is the Voice of Philosophy Doctor on YouTube Philosophy class. Today, Unit 31, the oldest systematic program of the German Idealism. Fourth chapter, Philosophy as a System. The philosophy of German Idealism refers to the philosophy from Kant to Hegel. Through this philosophy, Germany became the strong national philosophy. The influence of this philosophy is still alive. This philosophy can be compared with the great Greek classical philosophy of Plato and Aristotle. A great characteristic of German idealism is that it had a system, even though systematic philosophy was severely criticized by newly analytic linguistic philosophy. It has its merit. It has founded some solid principles of philosophy. When these principles of philosophy were applied to many branches of philosophy, the system of philosophy is to be born. From this standpoint, systematic philosophy can be said to be strong. The philosophies of Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel have all their own systems. Among them, the system of Hegel might be said to be the most powerful. By the way, a short document, which can be called smallest seed of the great systematic philosophies, was found in the early 20th century and attracted the great attention of philosophy and science. It is called the oldest systematic program of German Idealism. In German, das älteste Systemprogramm des deutschen Idealismus. Chapter 2. The oldest systematic program of German Idealism. A document named The Oldest System Program of German Idealism is not yet clearly researched. The author of that document has not been yet evidently investigated. However, the time of the creation was estimated around 1797. Since the discovery of the document, the interpretation of the source of German idealism has become active. First of all, Hegel wrote a document. However, the author of it might not himself, because Hegel could copy the writing. Otherwise, Hegel could record the writing. This is the critical problem about the document. The doubt of Hegel's authorship results from the philosophical contents of it. As regards the content of the document, the authorship might be rather ascribed to Schelling or Hölderlin. Hegel's friends group was made up of Hegel, Schelling, and Hölderlin. They were all from the German state of Baden-Württemberg, Stuttgart, and its vicinity. Hegel was from Stuttgart, Schelling, Nuremberg, Hölderlin, Laufen am Neckar. This picture is Hölderlin's homeland, Laufen am Neckar. Very beautiful land. This picture of Tübingen's three friends, Hegel, Schelling, and Hölderlin, all are very famous for their thought and philosophy. These three friends studied together in Tübingen Seminary, and further they shared a dormitory room. Therefore, their thoughts were quite similar. Most of all, they were all strongly impressed by French Revolution. However, after the theological seminary of Tübingen, their intellectual and philosophical development diverged enormously from each other. The document called the Oldest Systematic Program was found in an auction 1913 and hereafter was sold to Berlin Royal Museum. Then this document was published in 1917 by Franz Rosenzweig, who titled the document the Oldest Systematic Program of the German Idealism. Das älteste Systemprogramm des deutschen Idealismus. Then this document was in 1945 once more lost and then again found in the late 1970s. Helmut Schneider and Christopher Yamme edited it newly. Chapter 3, the problem of authorship of the oldest systematic program of German Idealism. There are three positions about authorship of the oldest systematic program of German Idealism. Firstly, Rosenzweig, the first publisher of the document, ascribed it to Schelling because some of its contents are similar to those of Schelling's publication, The System of Transcendental Idealism, 1799. Secondly, Cassirer ascribed authorship of this document to Hölderlin. Hölderlin and this document have something in common. The aestheticism, the idea of beauty, was regarded as the unity of theory and praxis, philosophy and mythology, folk religion and priest religion. But sure, Hölderlin's thought is characterized by the poetical pantheism, which is expressed in Hölderlin's novel Hyperion or the Hermit in Greece. Hölderlin emphasized beauty. On the fundament of the beauty, Hölderlin synthesized the nature, the mythos, and the religion. The aestheticism, which appeared in the last half of the oldest systematic program of the German Idealism, is analogous to Athenian discourse in his Hyperion. Thirdly, there is a position that regards the authorship of documents as Hegel, who self-recorded the document. This position is represented by Otto Pegler. To speak in advance, my Dr. And's thought is that this document was not conceived by one person but by two, that is, Schelling and Hölderlin. Namely, the document belongs to both of them. Further, Hegel wrote them down the thoughts of his two friends. In the following representation, Schelling's part will be marked 1, and Hölderlin's part will be marked 2. Chapter 4, the presentation and interpretation of the original text of the oldest systematic program of German Idealism. Part 1, Schelling's original thought. An ethics, since all metaphysics will henceforth fall into morals, for which Kant, with both of his practical postulates, has given only an example and exhausted nothing. So this ethics will contain nothing other than a complete system of all ideas, or what is the same of all practical postulates. Interpretation. Here, Kant's thought about metaphysics is revealed. Namely, metaphysics as the cognition of God, soul, freedom, can't be sustained as previously. To suppose an entity fall into dogmatism if it is not going through criticism of cognition. On top of it, Hegel's friends received the postulate of the practical reason by Kant. Kant suggested that the traditional metaphysics is possible through the postulate of practical reason. However, the postulate of the practical reason are merely a conjecture, supposition. The first idea is naturally the conception of myself as an absolutely free being. Along with the free self-conscious being, an entire world emerges simultaneously out of nothingness. The only true and conceivable creation out of nothingness. Here I will descend to the fields of the physics. The question is that how should a world be constituted for a moral being? I should like to give our physics, progressing laboriously with experiments, wings again. So whenever philosophy provides ideas, experience the data, we can finally obtain physics on the whole, which I expect of later epochs. It does not seem as if present-day physics could satisfy a creative spirit such as ours is or should be. Interpretation. The author is Schelling. correlates the philosophy of Kant with that of Fichte. Namely, he matches the concept of the idea in German Idee with that of ego, das Ich, which is the basic principle of Fichte's science of knowledge. The free self-consciousness being is as absolute declared. This is a radicalization of the ego philosophy of Fichte. It is a characteristic of a young Schelling who tried to combine Fichte with Spinoza. Fichte with Spinoza. Schelling's character. Then the concept of the world, an entire world emerged. The world is, in other words, the whole of finite things, that is universe or nature. It is said that an entire world emerged simultaneously out of nothingness. This phrase hints the Christian concept of the creation, creatio ex nihilo. However, this project of the young Schelling, which tried to connect various ideas of the different sources with another, is difficult to succeed. The concept of the world is exchangeable with nature. Here is the beginning of Schelling's own philosophy. Schelling's own idea of philosophy is nature philosophy. That is very important. Further, the essence of Schelling's nature philosophy 1799 lies in the concept of the physics. Schelling's concept of the physics, later speculative physics, emphasized the unity of duality or polarity. Therefore, Schelling's nature philosophy is reduced to speculative physics. In this regard, he criticized physics in normal sense, that is, physics as science. His concept of philosophical physics or speculative physics is yet to come. So, whenever philosophy provides ideas, experience, the data, we can finally obtain physics on the whole, which I expect of later epochs. From nature, I come to man's work. The idea of the human race. First, I want to show that there is no idea of the state, because the state is something mechanical, just as little as there is an idea of the machines. Only that which is the object of the freedom is called idea. We must therefore go beyond the state, because every state must treat free human beings like mechanical works, and it should not be do that. Therefore, it should cease. You see for yourself that here all the ideas that of eternal peace, etc., are merely subordinate ideas of the higher idea. At the same time, I want to set forth the principle for history of human race here and expose the whole miserable human work of state, constitution, government, legislature, down to the skin. Finally, the idea of the moral world, deity, immortality, overthrow of the everything, superstition, pseudo doctrines, persecution of the priesthood, which recently poses as a reason, comes through itself. The absolute freedom of all spirits who carry the intellectual world within themselves, and may not seek either God or immortality outside of themselves. Here, the antipathy to state appears. From the phrase, there is no idea, idea, the state, is to be concluded that the author of this document cannot be Hegel, because from the beginning, Hegel regarded the state as positive. The state is essential to human life. It's Hegel's own thought. Further, the thought of negative state might stem from Rousseau's naturalism. In the state of nature, there is no social restraint or bondage. Man was born free, etc. From this standpoint, the state would be regarded as machines, which expresses the freedom of mankind. Therefore, the state is compared to mechanical works. Besides the state, the constitution, government, legislature are critically treated. The author is anti-political. In this respect, either Hölderlin cannot be the author of this document. He wanted to elevate the folk through the folk's education. The protagonist of his Roman Hyperion is to be destined first teacher. As later represented, they also criticize religion, including deity, priesthood. However, Hegel and Hölderlin are religions-friendly. Kant's 1795 essay, Perpetual Peace, a philosophical sketch, is also alluded here in this document. However, the importance of it is decreased. The idea of the eternal peace is subordinated to a higher idea, which will be soon revealed as the idea of the absolute freedom. That is, the idea of peace is based on that of freedom. In addition, the major ideas, then, of Kant's philosophy, that is God, the world, and the immortality of soul, are treated. However, they are all critically treated. That is, they are derivative from absolute freedom of all spirits. This thought stems, however, from Fichte. In his work, an attempt at a critique of all revelation, Fichte tried to found religion things on the alienation theory, according to which the idea of God as the lawgiver is no other than that of human reason. In this respect, Fichte was regarded at that time as an atheist. The author of this part of the manuscript, Schelling, also follows Fichte's opinion about religion things. In terms of young Schelling, the absolute freedom of all spirits may not seek either God or immortality outside of themselves. That is, there is no God outside our reason, human spirit. Part 2, Hölderlin's original thought. Finally, the idea which unites all, the idea of beauty, the world taken in the higher Platonic sense. From now on, the philosophical aestheticism of Hölderlin appears on the scene. The idea of beauty is located on the center of the philosophical system. This is evident characteristic of Hölderlin's thought. Therefore, Ernst Cassirer regarded this manuscript as belonging to Hölderlin. Furthermore, the idea which sees beauty as the center of philosophy is related with the Kant thought. Theoretical reason and the practical reason are mediated through aesthetical reason, that is judgment. The beauty as the ground of philosophy is strengthened through the Platonic idea of beauty. Here, held in the text, I am convinced that the highest active reason, which in that it comprises all ideas, is an aesthetic act, and that truth and goodness are united like sisters own in beauty. The philosopher must possess just as much as aesthetic power as the poet. The people without aesthetic sense are our philosophers of the letter. The philosophy of the spirit is an aesthetic philosophy. One cannot be clever in anything. One cannot even reason cleverly in history without aesthetic sense. It should now be revealed here what those people who do not understand ideas are actually lacking, and candidly enough admit that everything is obscure to them as soon as one goes beyond the charts and the indices. The phrase, the highest active reason, also refers to aesthetical judgment activity in Kant's critical philosophy as above mentioned. Somehow, Hölderlin here seems to assert the primacy of the aesthetical reason, with which, however, Kant would disagree. Kant didn't give aesthetic the position of the reason or knowledge. He thought of the perception of beauty as a judgment, is a lower stage of knowledge. By Hölderlin, goodness and the truth are united in beauty as above discussed. In this regard, the philosopher is identified with the poet. The philosopher must have as much aesthetic power as the poet. Philosopher and the poet has the same quantity of aesthetic power. In this regard, the philosopher is identified with the poet. The philosopher must have as much aesthetic power as the poet. However, A sort of philosopher who doesn't have aesthetical sense is philosopher of the letter. This word alludes to the Bible phrase, "He has made us competent as ministers of the new covenant, not of the letter but of the spirit. For the letter kills, but the spirit gives life." 2 Corinthians, verse 3, line 6. In contrast to the philosopher of the letter, who has no aesthetic sense, the philosopher of the spirit has aesthetic sense. Hegel and his Tübingen friends are theology students, therefore they were all very well aware of the Bible. The philosopher of the letter is, according to Hölderlin, dependent on charts and indices. This thought alludes, for example, Kant's category table. In this regard, the philosopher of the letter could suggest Immanuel Kant or his philosophy. Return to Hölderlin text here. Poetry thereby obtains a higher dignity, is genuine Hölderlin's thinking. It becomes again in the end what it was in the beginning, teacher of the history, the human race, because there is no longer any philosophy, any history. Poetic art alone will outrive all the rest of the science and arts. The place of poetry is conspicuous among the various arts. This might refer to the Greek mythology, which Hölderlin emphatically admired. For example, in his Roman Hyperion, poetry is therefore the oldest art form from which other forms of human intelligence, for example, philosophy, history, picture, sculpture, comes. Poetry is therefore the genuine teacher of a human race. Therefore, no philosophy without poetry is Hölderlin's own genuine thought. What the poetry was in the beginning is, so to speak, the possibility of art or artistic impulse. On the contrary, what the poetry is in the end is the actuality of art or formation of art. In Hölderlin's words, in the beginning was the beauty, instead of words. Beauty and poetry are beginning and the end of all. Therefore, in the Roman Hyperion it reads, "The first child of the godly beauty is the art. The second daughter is religion." Here, return to Hölderlin's manuscript. At the same time, we so often hear that the great multitude should have a sensual religion. Underline. Not only the great multitude, but even philosophy needs it. Monotheism of reason and the heart. Polytheism of the imagination and the art. That is what we need. Here appears the thing of religion. Hölderlin's homeland acquaintance, Schiller, tried to interpret the story of Exodus in his writing Mission of Moses. This content was introduced in Unit 13.1, Mission of Moses, in this YouTube, The Voice of Philosophy. Schiller maintained that the old Egyptian religion was divided into priestly religion and folk religion. He said the one is monotheism and the other is polytheism. Furthermore, monotheism refers to deism, said Schiller. Polytheism is none other than idolatry, which was sort of imagination and art. According to Schiller, Moses used folk religion, that is polytheism and idolatry, in order to fortify the constitution and the nation, that is the state. Likewise, Hegel and Hölderlin follow the idea of Schiller regarding religion. They share the idea of the folk religion and the folk's education. Return to Hölderlin's text. First, I will speak about an idea here, which is, as far as I know, has never occurred to anyone's mind. We must have a new mythology. The mythology must, however, stand in the service of ideas. It must become a mythology of reason. Schiller's idea of dual religion. The idea of a dual religion, that is, elite religion and the folk religion, leads to the concept of a new mythology by Hölderlin. That is mythology of reason. Priest religion or elite religion is, as overset, none other than deism, which is actually some philosophical doctrine or worldview. On the contrary, folk religion, polytheism, is the work of art and imagination. The unity of each other different religion is, however, possible through the idea of beauty. Hölderlin's concept of the new religion would later turn into the motto of romanticism. Until we make ideas aesthetic, that is mythological, they hold no interest for the people, and conversely, before mythology is reasonable, the philosopher must be ashamed of it. Thus, finally, the enlightened and the unenlightened must shake hands. Mythology must become philosophical, and the people reasonable, and the philosophy must become mythological in order to make philosophy sensual. Here we see the concept of the unification philosophy appear, which include the formal thoughts of Hölderlin, the unity of philosophy and the mythology, of the enlightened and the unenlightened, or sensual philosophy and the reasonable mythology is the identity of non-identity. Thus, the term unification philosophy determines the early development of Hölderlin and Hegel. The unification philosophy seeks to enlighten the nation through the folk religion and the folk education. Return to Hölderlin's manuscript. Then eternal unity will reign among us, never again the tempestuous glance, never the blind trembling of the people before its wise man and the priest. Only then does equal development of all powers await us, of the individual as well as if all individuals. No power will be suppressed any longer. Then general freedom and equality of spirit will reign. A higher spirit sent from heaven must establish this religion among us. It will be the last work of the human race. In Hegel's word, the ideal of use is here represented. Under the idea of the beauty, general freedom and equality will be reached. An utopian world is coming. A higher spirit sent from the heaven will lead us to the paradise. It's a totally optimistic, idealistic prognosis of the future world by Hegel and Hölderlin. Today is end of the lecture. Thank you very much. Vielen Dank. See you again.